Hello, family. I'm Janaya Future Khan, and this is Dark Woke. Just before we hit it, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you that listen to the show, and a special shout out to the supporters who make this whole thing possible. It truly means the world to me. If you'd like to become a member, our Patreon is linked in the episode right up below. Oh, gosh, I'm never going to nail that. I don't think I'm ever going to nail it. You may have noticed two things, if you're really paying attention. One, we're finally on Apple. It did scrub it clean, so if you said something and you like the show, please say things on Apple again and rate it and do all the things, because it's gone. It's gone. There is a conspiracy. I'm certain of it. There's a conspiracy against adorable yappers. There's a conspiracy against adorable yappers. And the other thing they made a notice is there's ads on the show. I don't know if this is going to be a thing. We're figuring some stuff out. So we applied to this, on this back end thing so that it was an option. And then it just started automating them. And I don't know how to pick them or not pick them. And we're probably not going to continue this. I don't know. But the point is, just endure. We're figuring things out. But isn't the show starting to look good? Thank you so much, Corey. This is an episode that is singular in its topic. This is an episode that is singular in its topic. It's an episode where I can't pull out a bunch of research and stories and say, this is exactly what is happening, because it's happening as we speak. And the extent to which it will impact us as a generation, we will not know for possibly years to come, right? Think on the scale of COINTELPRO, right? Think on the scale of COINTELPRO. What I'm talking about is a specific spyware coupled with memos like NSPM7 that justifies the targeting of nonprofit leaders, nonprofit leaders, and activists. But here's what's important. It's not just activists and nonprofit leaders. Anybody who's doing anything at all, if you were even remotely critical of ICE, of the government, of anything, you are being watched. You're potentially being watched. You will be watched. We don't know. And that's the thing. Surveillance was one of the things that I struggled with. We struggled with as a movement to get people to think about, to care about data mining, right? Data mining. That was something that was incredibly serious and important. It's what all that data mining and the scraping and the things that were happening on the internet, these have shaped so many of the conditions that we're in. But there's going to be some serious overlaps that you're not going to believe, that go all the way back to Woodrow Wilson, that touch on Israel, because guess who developed the spyware? But you know what? Don't take it from me, right? We know that what I'm saying is facts, right? In terms of the surveillance culture. But what does it mean when America's preeminent lesbian is also saying the same thing? And no, I'm not talking about Colbert. He's my number one favorite one. But his sister, his sis, Rachel Maddow, breaks it down really well. I want you to listen to this segment because it's going to provide a backdrop for what I'm talking about. And then we're going to make it make sense and provide one or two steps for how we can maybe protect ourselves in this new wave of Big Brother and the Panopticon.
It probably should come as no surprise that the Trump administration is trying to give themselves all sorts of new, very intrusive powers against American citizens who might want to protest against them. And this is a subject that I think there is a real media challenge in terms of conveying the seriousness of this stuff. And I have struggled it with myself. This is a story that I care about a lot. I think it's hard to convey. It's hard to get people to picture exactly the risk here. Not too long ago, a couple years ago, I wrote the introduction to this book. It's called Pegasus: How a Spy in Your Pocket Threatens the End of Privacy, Dignity, and Democracy. I did not write this book. It's an excellent book. It's written by two amazing, investigative, award-winning journalists from France. I wrote the introduction to that book, though, because I've been basically like standing on my head, contorting myself, trying to figure out a way to do this story, how to make it make sense to an American audience, that we need to watch out now in this generation today. We need to watch out for a kind of authoritarian surveillance technology that was never, ever available to authoritarian regimes in the past, but is available to authoritarian regimes now. And in our time, this technology has been sitting on the table like a loaded gun, waiting for a would-be dictator to come to power in America and use it against us. You may remember when the Washington Post columnist and longtime Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi was kidnapped and murdered. You may remember the salient detail that they cut up his body with a bone saw. Responsibility for Khashoggi's murder has been laid squarely at the feet of the Saudi government. The tactical means by which they got to him has in part been laid to a piece of spyware. Cell phone spyware called Pegasus. It's spyware that infects your phone. They target your phone. You don't have to do anything wrong to be infected with it. You don't have to click on anything or do anything. They infect your phone with this spyware without you ever knowing it. Your phone shows no sign of it. And once they have infected your phone, they get access to everything that is on your phone and everything that you do with your phone. They can access its location at any time. They can turn on the microphone to hear what's happening where you are. They can turn on the camera to see you and what's around you. They can see all of the photos on your phone, all of your contacts, all of your messages, all of your notes to self, everything, even stuff that you might think is encrypted. It's not encrypted when you look at it on your phone. If you can look at it on your phone, they will have it. People close to Jamal Khashoggi were found to have been targeted, to have had their phones targeted with Pegasus software before he was murdered. Pegasus has been used to target opposition politicians and activists and lawyers and journalists all over the world, some of whom have subsequently been assassinated by despotic regimes. When this kind of a spyware surveillance tool emerged as a favored weapon for authoritarian governments and murderous dictatorships around the world, the Joe Biden administration banned the U.S. government from ever using that particular spyware or anything like it. Well, then Donald Trump was elected, and the Trump administration has now quietly reversed that ban. And indeed, they have now contracted with a company that makes exactly that same kind of spyware as Pegasus. And which part of the Trump administration is using it? Which part of the Trump administration has been given this surveillance tool? ICE. And are they using it just against immigrants? Yeah, right, as if. Headline in the Washington Post: ICE amps up its surveillance powers. ICE's acting director says the agency will deploy its elite investigative officers to probe anti-ICE protest networks. Former officials have expressed concern that ICE now has a green light not only to monitor immigrant communities, but also to carry out broad surveillance of Americans, exercising their First Amendment right to oppose government action. U.S. citizens who may not themselves be suspected of crimes. According to the Electronic Privacy Information Center, quote, "We don't know if law enforcement or ICE are even getting search warrants to deploy this software." Paragon, the company that makes this version of this no-click, take-over-your-phone software, which Trump has now given to ICE, Paragon software has been used by the Italian government to infect the phones of opposition politicians and activists who help immigrants. Penlink, another surveillance company that provides real-time location data about you to the government without a warrant. It's been used in the past to target opposition politicians and activists in Mexico and also in Hong Kong. Now our government, and specifically ICE, has those and more. Again, supposedly to use in their mission against immigrants, but also apparently to use against Americans who are protesting against them, and to use that stuff with or without a warrant, and with or without any restraint at all. This turns your own phone into a spy against you. This is a surveillance capability I have been laying awake at night thinking about for the past couple of years. Now Trump is in power. And Americans are protesting against him every single day of the week and twice on Sundays. And so naturally, he is happily signing the contracts that give his government this power. And he is handing this power to the most untrained, most lawless, most aggressive, pseudo-military parts of his government to use against American citizens without warrants and without us being notified that it's happening. What are they going to do to us with this stuff? And what do we do about it?
Nobody said it better than Maddow. It's one thing when we're talking about it, and we know the dangers as activists, as leftists, as thinking people. But what I have constantly underestimated is America's obsession with access, right? It's like, well, it doesn't matter if my private data is scraped. I'm not doing anything illegal. The trade-off is worth it to me for access. And it's interesting. It's interesting because I can't illustrate how dangerous this is. It's one thing if when you have one or two things working against you when it comes to something like spyware. Okay, we have an authoritarian government, let's say, right? We have white supremacists in the White House in the Trump administration, but you had a Biden check, right, on the, making illegal the use of this spyware in America, which we had. That the spyware exists in of itself is a problem. I mean, do you remember when we got the story of how certain members of Hamas were targeted by the Israeli military through the use of pagers, right? This is a spyware that has almost no footprint. It infects your phone. It's not traceable. It can turn your phone on. It can turn your camera on. It can listen to conversations that you're having. Now you might say, yeah, but who wants to hear? Who's going to pour through this? If it's illegal, it's not admissible in a court of law. But what happens when they also own the law and they've made it legal? The legal precedents are now bought and paid for. So why is this dangerous? What's the impact of this, right? NSPM 7 is a memo that Trump signed into office in September, okay? And what this allows is the government to target nonprofits and activists, anybody who criticizes ICE. And so I want you to see this as twofold, okay? We have the DOJ and the Trump administration, CIA, FBI, that loser Kash Patel, and all these things are working to say, how can we eliminate any kind of criticism of this administration, of this government, and of the other fugly skanks that are ruining this country? You criticize ICE, right? I hate to be that guy, but remember when I talked about, it goes back to slavery always. Something else, please. But what did we say? Years ago, we were like, abolish ICE. ICE was made up. It was made up. It made no sense to have another law enforcement entity on a non-issue. Now they have inflated budgets. They're hiring anyone and everyone. But I have been laughing though, because one third of the people signing up for ICE right now can't meet the physical requirement. And I'm like, no, don't bring good. Hire them all. Hire everyone who is trash. But this is the Gestapo. Is that Gestapo? Yeah. This is them. This is what it looks like. And part of what's infuriating about the Democrats, of course, is, do something extreme. Give us something to buy into and believe in. But they consistently seem to think that, okay, we'll get them in the midterms. I don't actually believe that this government will accept the results of midterms. We have yet to see that. Now, I'm basing that on what I know to be true from here, but I want to talk about NSPM 7 because I told myself you're not going to go everywhere on this. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to put it in context of American history, and then we're going to talk about how we can get out of this. So NSPM 7, it's the National Security Presidential Memorandum, okay? And it's called Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence. I want to be really clear. I want to be really clear about how political violence is understood by this administration and many people in the GOP. Political violence is you say things that I don't like about how we govern, or really, if we're being honest, how they don't govern, right? But political violence isn't theft of homes and dignity, not being able to have your SNAP benefits, not being able to feed your children. You want to talk about political violence? How about the fact that Republican senators withhold necessary funds from their constituents just to stick it to the Democrats? How about the fact, you want to talk about political violence, that healthcare is it's not free, but your teeth and your eyes are somehow not a part of that? Why is that a thing? Focus, future. Political violence. We have been framed on the left as if we are violent. Terms like far left are rampantly and wantonly used by this administration and by Fox News and everything else. What's violent? Right? Like when we say the far left, right? The left has one crime that they're guilty of. One, right? I include myself in this. We're fucking annoying. That's our major crime. You want to know what the beliefs of this so-called far left are? Bread on the table, right? Livable wages, being able to raise a family and own a home, healthcare, that's free, education, that's free, right? Elder care. These are the things, right? These are the things. An actual public education that's robust, an actual meritocracy. And granted, some of the left has fallen into identitarian bullshit, and I don't have time for that. That's not the left. That is more useless posturing that has come from too much time in post-secondary education and not enough time in the actual real world. We're service workers. It's not about people understanding you. It's about you understanding people. That's what being a leftist is. So civil, nonprofits, activists, right? Anybody who is critical of this government in any way can be prosecuted under law. There have been FBI raids. We're not seeing it in the news. You're not seeing it in the news. Some journalists have gestured at it, but there's legal cases being created as we speak. But Letitia James, right, is, I think, a great embodiment of what we can expect, right? Letitia James, Attorney General of New York, has been in the news endlessly. And by the way, she's coming out swinging, which I really appreciate, right? Because the government, this Trump administration, is targeting her explicitly. What you'll find is that there seems to be a consistent thread of targeting Black people, Black women, any kind of activists, trans people, right? There's been FBI raids, not in California, but there's been FBI raids on doctors who have performed gender affirming care. There have been FBI raids on people that I know personally, that I love, family members, right? And as some of you know, Patrice, her home was raided. Though more details to come, and for what? Right? Because of the threat that she might represent. I'm like, the girl makes performance art. I've never understood that. Right? Like, you're not, like, I don't understand what, being in a bathtub, a clawfoot bathtub full of coconut milk while there's honey and glitter and a white dress. I don't know what that means, but other people do, and they really like it. Right? Let people do their little art things, but it's the mere threat. It's the mere possibility, right? So what we're seeing is the legal system being used as a weapon against anyone that is critical of this government anyway. And you don't need to be an activist. And I hope Madam made that really clear. You don't need to be an activist. So there's layers that I want you to take away from this. I want you to think of Pegasus. The FBI was using a version of Pegasus called Phantom, but now they can use the whole thing. This Pegasus, the Israelis, they made it. And you want to know what it's being used to investigate? In America, things like anti-Semitism. What's considered anti-Semitism in America right now? Not actual anti-Semitism, right? That is most embodied by the political right, including those in the Trump administration. No, the anti-Semitism is anyone who's critical of Israel, not white supremacists in America. Those are not the folks who are being targeted, not the growing problem that just keeps on growing. No, it's being used to target anyone who is critical of Israel, right? Right now, UCLA's School of Medicine is under multiple investigations by the Department of Justice, right? For what, you ask? Why? Concerns around anti-Semitism, right? They're being investigated for potential violations of civil rights laws related to its mission policies, and another from the House of Education and Workforce Committee concerning anti-Semitism, right? And for the record, these lawsuits are filed by two different parties, right? Jews and Asians. And we saw what happened when affirmative action was removed. It didn't seem to help Asian folks out at all. They seemed to be really confused, right? We did a whole episode on that, but now that we're doing this all over again, I'm happy to revisit, right? But you didn't go after legacy admissions, which actually make up the majority of admissions in these Ivy League institutions. No. You went after a small subset of Black people, because Black folks who got in, because you were under the racist belief that you weren't getting in because DEI. It turns out that wasn't the case at all, right? Y'all know I be loving my little Ashkenazis. I don't believe I love them. So I think we're going to get some of those in the race war too. Italians, Irish, and the Ash. But I'm going to tell you this right here. It's like Zionism is not a reflection of Jewish people, but they're getting conflated over and over and over again. And what we have is this disgusting union here in America between Jewish folks who believe in Zionism, right? Which, again, I don't think is a term I'm interested in using anymore. They're Jewish extremists, which is aligned with white supremacy. And I think we need to popularize the term Jewish extremism in the way that we understand there are things like Christian extremism and fundamentalism. We understand that there's Islamic extremism, but we don't call Jewish extremism, or, you could say Judaic extremism, or those who believe in Israeli apartheid. I think we have to stop using the term Zionist. It's not, it's lost meaning, it's lost weight, it's easily traceable. And I don't think it accurately captures what the reality is. Right? Zionism is too easily categorized as, we deserve a place of safety. Okay, cool. No, but Israeli apartheid, well, that's something else. But there's a very powerful union here, and we've got a white supremacist Christian theocracy, fascist in nature, that is sitting in the driver's seat. And you have a massive foreign lobby like AIPAC, right? And apartheid interest groups, Israeli apartheid interest groups that got their hands on the wheel. And we're going wherever they want us to go. That's spyware being adopted. That's to take us out. TikTok being sold. That's to shut us up. And the scale at which we are being monitored. Right? Again, we were always being monitored. This is not to drum up hysteria, right? We're already being monitored. But I need us to understand the full sweep that we're in right now. How many laws have been broken? How many people are fundamentally broken in this country? What's been normalized? Stealing people off the streets, disappearing them, right? Every person that gets swept up, that's a person, that's you, that's me. And what we allow to happen to others will happen to us. So the conditions that brought us here, we have to be very, very clear that this is not, how do I want to say this? I can't illustrate enough how the particular circumstances that are informing this time that we're in. And what's a good hand in poker? I don't play poker. Corey, do you know what's a good hand in poker? You're too gay. You probably don't know either. I don't know if you guys heard that, but he said, yeah, why the fuck would you ask a fag? Okay, a royal flush. Okay, it is that does not sound nice at all. But it is a royal flush. It is a royal flush. That's what this is. And this makes how we protect ourselves matter more than ever. And I know everyone's like, it matters more than ever. No, but this really does. This really, really, really does, because it means we have to consolidate power very, very quickly. I want to be clear. When Black Lives Matter was happening, back when we were like the really cool one, whatever happened in 2020, I'm not upset at it. It was just a different movement, but we were infiltrated. We were monitored. Terms like Black identity extremism came to the forefront, and it justified that monitoring, that surveillance, right? And one of the things, and the surveillance that's been normalized really since 9/11, again, ties back. This spyware Pegasus was used on Palestinians. It comes back here. How we allow other people to be treated will inevitably end up here. And this is a moment where we have to remember again that it comes down to policy. They say something, right? They write something, and then the military arms and branches work to see through the outcome that they want. It's that simple. It's just that simple. Policy can also be used to protect us, right? Or defend us and our rights to things like privacy. That's what Biden signed into law. That's what's been reversed. I hate that I have to say that word so much. Policy, 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 policy. It's like, it's the one area that I really, it also explains something I couldn't figure out. We've never developed a strategy against gentrification. That was always something that bothered me. I've never seen a real successful strategy against gentrification. I'm starting to think that maybe it has something to do with policy. But the scale at which this is happening. So if you criticize the government, if you criticize ICE, right? ICE is the Gestapo. ICE is the embodiment of this administration's desires, its dreams, its Gestapo, its enforcers. Right? They're cracking institutions. They're cracking expertise. They don't want any kind of resistance. Corey, can we pull up the other clip that talks about the social media monitoring tool? So we talked about Pegasus that infects our phones. I want you to also learn about this monitoring tool. It's a super short video.
We have some news right now. ICE is rapidly expanding its surveillance state-like system and will be surveilling billions of social media posts, including yours, especially those who are anti-ICE, anti what the Trump administration is doing. And here's what you need to know about it. According to The Lever, ICE has inked a $5.7 million contract to procure a surveillance item called Signal Labs. Historically, it's been used by the Israeli military, by the Pentagon, and now it's going to be used by ICE for a period of up to 5 years. This program allows ICE to monitor upwards of 8 billion social media posts per day. Now, this comes after an earlier Wired article suggested that ICE is building out a surveillance system type like state, rapidly expanding its surveillance capabilities of Americans. ICE is rapidly increasing the equipment it has to surveil you and your social media profiles. And more people need to know about it, so please spread the word so people are aware. Follow along for more. I'll have more updates on my Substack this morning, linked to my bio, so subscribe for free.
All right, yeah. Good. That's good shit, though. Billions of social media posts in a day, in minutes, right? We know that AI is a tool that can actually do good. It could have made our lives so much better. It could be used to solve all of our fucking problems. Not all. Not all. But it's not used for that. It's not used to figure out how to develop new antibiotics. AI is not being used to help figure out how to clean up oceans or how to apply the already existing medications that pharmaceutical companies are not incentivized to develop, right? 4,000 medications that we have for 4,000 illnesses, but we have 14,000 more that don't have proper treatment protocol because they're too niche or too weird. But those are killing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people a year in America alone, right? That's not what AI is being used for. AI is being used to make sure that you stay stupid and that you stay silent. It's being used as a monitoring tool, right? These things are then used to make portfolios. We may not know the significance of it. We might not even think about it until one day you get a knock on your door, right? I have to be prepared for that knock at all times. I'm glad we're flying under the radar right now because I can talk so much shit. But I know that's just while Corey and I lock certain things in, right? So knowing how to protect oneself, knowing where this comes from, right? All of that matters. I want to tell you a little bit about why this isn't, okay, freak out time. Remember I told you, it's just that we've been here before. We've been here before. I want to take you back to World War I. Around that time, Woodrow Wilson is the president. We think, oh God, Trump is disgusting. He's horrid. He's the Trump administration. They're full of bigots and racists. And yeah, okay, totally. Some of them definitely are, right? Greed. Woodrow Wilson was a prick. He was a bitch, right? This is a guy that referred to black people as monkeys. He believed that, we're capable. We didn't have the IQ to govern ourselves. We weren't people. This is the guy who screened Birth of a Nation in the White House, right? Thinking 1917, 1918, around this time, okay? So this is a time, just past World War I, Germany gets punished universally, right? They end up having to pay huge reparations, which creates the economic conditions that Hitler would later seize on, blame Jews for, and also the LGBTQ community, any black people. I want to remind people, I think we forget always that in Nazi Germany, it was not Jewish folks that were originally targeted. It was socialists. It was leftist organizations. Because if you remove the pillars that protect people, that provide people with care, that provide leadership and resources, then you can go after the people and no holds bar. No holds bar. So go back to that time of the Bolshevik Revolution, right? Leninism, Bolshevism, an overthrow of Russian capitalism, a violent revolution that is successful for a time, right? Succumb to the same types of problems that leadership succumbs to when it's not principled. But the point is that it was a bug, this idea that wealth should be redistributed, that we shouldn't believe in monarchies, right? That people deserve dignity and rights and protections, and that the governments that take also needed to give and invest, right? It was that belief. Woodrow looked over at what was going on all the way over there in Russia. He was like, absolutely fucking not. Nobody here's doing that. So they write up some shit into law. Started out with the Espionage Act of 1917, right? Anybody who criticized the war, criticized American government, anybody in the administration, right? Any kind of criticism at all, right? Could be enough, right? False statements. But at that point, it was with the intent to interfere with the operation or success of the military. Post a successful armed revolution across the waters, the Espionage Act was expanded into the Sedition Act of 1918, right? This is where shit got bad. This is where it was expanded out, right? So anybody at all who criticized the government, right? Who anti-war sentiment were targeted. Speech was criminalized. Free speech didn't happen until a couple, it actually ended up being more protected a decade or two later by two judges in particular, right? So it's just funny because everyone's like, we need to go back to America as it was. And I'm like, when you didn't have free speech? Because that's what it was, right? So it was a very narrow scope. It was the Sedition Act made it a crime to use disloyal, profane, scurrilous, or abusive language toward the U.S. government, military, or flag. What that language was subject to interpretation, right? Anybody who criticized the war at all, or the war effort, prison. Postal censorship, right? So it gave the Postmaster General the power to refuse mail that violated the Act's provisions. This is bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? This is nasty. Hold on, I gotta say that I'm running late to something. Hold on, you guys. Okay. Harsh penalties were imposed, so convictions could result in significant prison sentences and fines, right? The point was, we don't want anybody in this country thinking that they can have any kind of revolution here, can be critical of anything here, right? Who upheld it? The Supreme Court. Sounds like we had white supremacists in the White House that were openly and nakedly more white supremacists than anybody can be today. Maybe yesterday, not today, right? Screening fucking Birth of a Nation in the shit, calling black folks monkeys, essentially, right? Supreme Court in the back pocket made any kind of dissent absolutely illegal, pick people up off the street, right? Supreme Court upheld it. You can look up Schneck was Schneck v. United States, arguing that wartime restrictions on speech were permissible. So the question is, what was the impact of that, right? Over 2,100 people were arrested under the Sedition Act. 2,100 people, right? 2 cases in particular are standouts. So I was doing some research on this because I just know. Emma Goldman was one of those people. She wasn't charged under the Sedition Act explicitly, right? But she was prosecuted under the Espionage Act of 1917 for conspiring against the draft. It led to her imprisonment and eventual deportation in 1919. They sent her to Russia, right? The Sedition Act wasn't enacted yet. It was enacted while she was already imprisoned. But her case was a precursor to the kind of activities that this law aimed to suppress, including speech, right? Anything that could incite resistance. The expansion into the Sedition Act was for anyone who criticized the government or its efforts. They wanted to absolutely crush any kind of dissent. The other case that jumped out at me, of the 2,100 people, right, were prosecuted. This person spent 10 years in prison. Socialist presidential candidate Eugene V. Debs. Charged with violating the same thing, Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918 for an anti-war speech he gave in fucking Ohio. So he was convicted to sedition and sentenced to 10 years in prison. I want us to remember political prisoners, right? Political prisoners. Another reason why prison abolition was so important. His sentence was commuted by President Harding on Christmas Day in 1921, right? The Supreme Court, though, upheld his conviction. They ruled that his speech was intended to obstruct the military draft and recruitment. This is a government that loves war, right? Any pro-Palestine march was an anti-war, anti-apartheid, anti-hate march. It's not about being an activist anymore. It's about believing in justice and equality. And if you have those beliefs, you are a target. He was released, by the way, on Christmas Day. On Christmas Day. But I want to remind us that we've been here before and we fought and we won. But how we won was in part because there was policy. There were fights around policy. There was an understanding. And this is the last thing I want to say because I wanted to keep this one right and tight. This is what I want us to understand. I've been thinking about this because I'm like, why didn't we care about policy? And then I'm going to give us some steps on what we could do to protect ourselves more. This is going to sound out there, but just hear me out, right? We failed on policy. We have failed on policy in every way. And I think it's because it's not serious. It's unserious to us because it's stupid. It's this, right? If somebody, this is how normal people think. This is how normal people think, right? If somebody has lived somewhere for 40 years and so has 18 generations, it doesn't even have to be that much. Could be 4, could be 1. Somebody has lived there. That's their home, right? Somebody has worked the land. That's their land, whatever, right? You live there. So if you miss a payment, you're thinking as a person, oh, okay, well, they missed the payment, but they'll just get the payment done. And, whatever. They've been there for however long. But through a policy perspective, right? That person misses the payment. They don't know that that's reported to such and such And then an entity or an individual makes that payment and suddenly now owns your shit. That doesn't make sense to us. That's the entire logic of the West, right? Oh, indigenous people? No. We wrote on this paper that this belongs to me now. This is mine now because of this paper. To rational people, that is fucking stupid. And as things evolved, it was obviously used to help protect people, to set a precedent, but always rigged towards the same class of folks to work in their favor and to their benefit. But we have constantly and consistently, at least in my generation, underestimated its seriousness because it's so fucking stupid. But it's true. If we don't have, we were being poisoned with lead and asbestos, and so policy had to be written to protect us from lead and asbestos in our water and in our homes. And yes, it's true. In certain places, particularly in black places in America, like we know Flint still doesn't have clean water, right? Because with that comes the ability to enforce those things, enforce those protections. But it happens when we are in power and when we maintain power. Every single good that exists is because some kind of policy has been enforced. Why do we not have child labor anymore? Which, by the way, is coming back in America. Because things had to be written to make it so. Why are women or black people allowed to vote? Why are gay people allowed to marry? That's currently under question. I'm like, you know what? Go ahead and go after gay marriage. Because if you wake up those rich white gay men who don't have to live in this world and have been able to accumulate wealth without any of the baggage that comes with intergender, interracial kind of relationship. Oh no! Imagine two white men together. The money, not the queer ones. They're artsy, and then but the gays, not the faggots, the gays. You know what I'm talking about because you don't know none of them. If you stir them up, there's going to be a fight, and that's exactly it. When we get together, we win. But again, how did we even get that? It was written into what law? Into policy. And it sounds so fucking stupid and I hate it, but that's what it is. Always. This is where we have failed. Because it's stupid and we know that it's stupid, but its seriousness can no longer be undermined. Okay. So what can we do? This was complicated for me to understand. How do you detect something that has zero footprint on your phone? Zero, right? It requires a forensic analysis of your phone. And even then the footprint is so small. The level of expertise that is required to check is involved and onerous. This is one of those ways, but best and most importantly, just sometimes become very accustomed to walking away from your phone sometimes. All right? Become very accustomed to turning it off sometimes. Get used to not having it around you constantly. And I know that's hard, right? There are bags that can shut it off. There's things like airplane mode, but again, these folks can turn on and you don't think anything, but I want to remind you that I know somebody that was convicted in one of the G20 protests because they were able to make a connection on a belt buckle through CCTV, a fucking belt buckle, right? That led to a conviction. This was before any of this. The G20 was a long time ago. Okay. So one of these tools, if you visit the MVT on the GitHub page, right, this is the Mobile Verification Toolkit. It has a link and a write-up of the episode. On the page, there's a very detailed explainer on how to install this on your devices, right? I want to be clear, this is involved. You need to understand Python. It's a whole coding thing. So this is just an option, but mainly it's a reminder that we don't have to have these things on us all the time, right? I want us to be mindful of what we're posting. No one's coming after anybody immediately. But again, green card holders. Actually, do you know what? They are. They actually already are. I don't want to incite hysteria, but they already are. There's cases that are being built against you. The point is that to hit critical mass, there's so many of us doing it so often, right? And we have methods in place, practices in place, game plans in place that we know to execute. So for example, for every protest, we made sure there was a bail fund. We knew exactly who the lawyers were. We projected exactly what prison or holding centers we would be sent to, right? What to do if you didn't hear from somebody within a very small window of time. There's ways that we can actually create pipelines of advocacy so that when our folks are taken, they're not disappeared and they're not alone, right? Cause such a fucking racket, such noise that it's not worth the trouble, okay? So you install this thing on your device. If it's too complicated or involved, there are a lot of YouTube videos on how to install MVT on both your iPhone and Android. This is true for PCs and MacBooks. They can do it. It infects everything, and we, literally could just be walking around, right? These videos are available, and they're made to detect these sophisticated viruses on personal devices, including Pegasus. Okay, so, and again, we're not even talking about the social media monitoring tool, right? Also Israeli, by the way, made by an Israeli company, NCOS, who also made Pegasus. So, and the other thing is, we're going to name these places. But the last thing I want to end on is where we need to grow a bit, not just on policy. But I remember people being like, "Fuck the ACLU, they defend white supremacists," and it wasn't one or two. Like, how can we ever care about the ACLU? They defend white supremacists. Yeah, it was a free speech. I don't know why we think that people who say things we don't like, right, should be punished. I don't think that's a useful thing. In fact, it's had major, massive blowback. Having an intolerance for different opinions, even if they're fucked up, is not how movements are made. You can't have an anti-vision of a future. You have to make your future so compelling, so irresistible, so fucking awesome and magnificent that those people who will always exist are just marginal. But their right to say their stupid shit should be protected, because that also gives us the right to say our stupid shit, even if the shit's not stupid. It's okay. We do not have a robust analysis on policy. We don't have a respect for the legal system. And I don't mean respect like, don't break the law. I mean, in understanding it. And that's exactly where we're being killed. We're getting crushed. We can get out on the street as much as we want. It doesn't mean anything if it's not attached to actionable realities. Campaigns that can be followed through on. We keep doing awareness building campaigns. We don't fucking need that anymore. We all know too much now. I'm plagued by what I know. I know too much. I'm getting that book that Maddow recommended, by the way. And these are people that we'll be talking to. Antitrust laws, the monopoly, why our experience of the world is so garbage right now, right? All these massive mergers. Do you know that there was, I think a couple years ago, maybe even last year, there was the two teenagers that made an app that called OG something, and it was, you could, so that on Instagram, you only saw posts from people you followed. Meta called up Apple and had it removed. Just like that. Why? We don't have antitrust laws. What are antitrust protections and laws? Policy. Policy. So we got to find a way. But it's good. Like I said, we have to study this new game plan. They're attacking Black folks, non-for-profits, organizations on purpose. Right? They're targeting immigrants, activists, leftists, trans folks, right? Anti-apartheid Jewish folks, right? All of us. Muslims, Arabs, all of them. So what happens if we really start finding each other? What happens when we see through something that we fight for and actually get it? That's what we are owed, and that's what we owe to each other, to the future, and to ourselves. So this is a little special interview, special episode. There's more to be said. I'm processing this as we speak. And again, part of the issue is that there's so much secrecy around this. We often don't learn things until it's years too late, but that's not how we're going to play it this time, right? We have to learn and study. And I want to remind us, the reason why I brought up the Sedition Act and the Espionage Act, and this, because these are unprecedented times. Not really. We can win this, and we will, as soon as we get our shit together. And I think we are. So with that, hey, we had 1 week of 3 episodes. This is the norm. This is what you can expect. We're back on Apple. Go ahead and show some love if you can. And really, it's just growing it up from here, but growing with intention. I am reading The Brothers right now. And it's all, I mean, when you find out that it's really just a bunch of assholes, like a handful, that shaped all of America's foreign policy. And that's exactly why we live in hell, and America is one of the most reviled places in the world. It was John Foster Dulles. Yes, this guy who Washington's airport was named after, and his brother. One was the Secretary of State. The other was the head of the CIA. And they worked in cohesion. But what we often didn't see is, and we another thing we don't quite understand is these massive law firms, right, that protect the interests of these corporations that also are shaping exactly what our experience of the world is. And we don't even know. We haven't even begun to unpack how their protection of folks' interests. I mean, that's where the Dulles brothers were trained, in these law firms, right? The same law firms that protected the corporatocracy. It's why we were like, oh, lawyers to begin with, right? But they're the ones who work against us, and they're the ones who work for us, who fight alongside us. And I think we have to develop a strong sense of respect for the reality of how much this boring shit matters. Like, it sucks. But it fucking matters. It's everything. It's why we haven't seen a single one. We've taken for granted the protections and rights that were fought for before us, and they're on the chopping block. Some of them have already been reversed. Cool. That's what evil gonna do. But the gloves are off. This is our time, right? So make, think, create, right? Do everything. Do everything and anything. And it's okay if you don't necessarily know what that looks like right now. It's going to get very clear very, very quickly, right, where our best efforts are needed. I have no doubt about. You get a long view and a sense of urgency, we're good, So, more to be said, so much more to be said on this. But I love you all very much. Thank you, Corey, for making it look and sound great. Thank you to all of you who are stuck it through with me, and just been on this weird little roller coaster of trying. Now I'm like, oh, now I understand why it's just a bunch of like dudes who live at home who can do this shit. Because what it actually, jeez, I had no idea. But we got time, and we got energy, and we got right on our side. So I love you all very much. Thank you so much for listening to Dark Woke, and I can't wait to yap it up with you again. Love you. See you soon.